If you ever felt like the search for meaning or truth or, whatever you want to call the divine is just exhausting, like it's a constant, never-ending treadmill of doing the right things, reading the right books, going to the right places, then this deep dive is going to completely upend how you think about all of that.
Yeah, we are diving into a truly remarkable text today. It's an exploration of spiritual truth by Guru Nanak Dev Ji, specifically a passage set in Rag Dhanaasaree, which is found on page 686 of the source material.
Okay, let's unpack this because before we get to the core message, I do want to clarify something about the format of the source itself. You mentioned this is set in Rag Dhanaasaree.
Right.
For someone listening who maybe isn't familiar with that term, what actually is a rag? Like, we are just talking about a chapter heading, aren't we?
No, far from it. And that is a crucial detail for understanding the text. In the Indian classical tradition, a rag is, well, it's a specific musical framework. It dictates the notes, the mood, and even the time of day it's traditionally meant to be sung.
Wow.
Yeah, so Rag Dhanaasaree, for instance, evokes a mood of deep yearning, kind of a quiet detachment and a longing for connection. So right out of the gate, the medium is part of the message.
Which is fascinating.
Exactly. This text isn't a dry philosophical manual meant to be debated in a sterile classroom. It's meant to be sung, felt, and experienced on a real emotional frequency.
Which perfectly sets up the mission of today's deep dive. We're going to explore what might just be the ultimate shortcut to understanding where the divine actually resides.
We really are.
We're going to break down this beautiful concept called sahaj, which translates to intuitive poise. And, maybe most shockingly for you listening, we're going to discover why a whole lot of the things people typically do to be quote-unquote spiritual are actually a complete and utter waste of time, according to this text.
Yeah, it doesn't hold back.
Not at all. Because before we can figure out where to find the divine, the text takes a very hard look at where the divine is definitely not found.
Right. The passage establishes this stark contrast between our external, performative actions and our internal reality. It begins by critiquing outward religious displays. We are talking about things like worshipping stones, dwelling at sacred shrines of pilgrimage, wandering endlessly in jungles.
Or just dropping out of society entirely to become a renunciate, right?
Exactly.
It's basically calling out the spiritual checklist, like the physical actions people take to prove their devotion to themselves or everyone watching them.
Yeah, and the text asks a highly pointed question regarding those actions. It notes that a person can wander the globe, roam around sacred sites, renounce all worldly possessions, but, and here's the major psychological pivot, if their mind is still filthy, how can they possibly become pure?
Yeah.
The argument is that God, or the true Lord, is not pleased by stubborn-mindedness, nor is the divine pleased by someone simply putting on various religious robes.
It just cuts right through the performance. But there's a line right after that which I genuinely struggled with. It goes beyond just saying, you don't need to wear a specific robe or live in a jungle.
Right.
It says this, and I'm quoting here, "Reading and studying, one becomes confused and suffers punishment. By great cleverness, one is consigned to coming and going in reincarnation."
This is a strong statement.
I have a real problem with this. Because for you listening, think about how much our society values information. My entire job, basically our whole modern economy, is built on the idea that if you just acquire enough data and apply enough intellect, you can solve any problem.
Sure.
Are we really saying education and intellect are spiritual dead ends?
Well, let's separate functional, everyday education from the concept of spiritual cleverness.
Right.
The text isn't telling you to forget how to do math or how to read a map.
Okay, good.
It's targeting the specific arrogance that assumes you can decode the infinite using the finite tool of the human intellect. Think about how the intellect actually works. It works by categorizing, dividing, analyzing, and judging. It breaks things apart into smaller pieces to understand them.
It's a dissecting tool.
Yes, but spiritual truth, according to this text, is about absolute unity. So if you try to use a dissecting tool to achieve unity, you're going to end up incredibly frustrated.
That makes a lot of sense.
That's why the text says reading and studying makes one confused. When you rely only on intellect, on the ego's ability to solve the universe like a crossword puzzle, you fall into the trap of cleverness.
I see what you mean now. It immediately makes me think of modern information overload. It's like when you read 50 different self-help books or listen to a dozen different optimization gurus, and you just become completely paralyzed.
Exactly.
You get so wrapped up in the mental mechanics of how to live a perfectly optimized life that you become confused, and you entirely miss out on the actual experience of living.
And that mental paralysis is directly tied to the text's warning about reincarnation. It states that cleverness consigns you to coming and going in reincarnation. Why? Because cleverness is driven by the ego, and the ego is always restless.
Always looking for the next thing.
Right, it's always looking for the next problem to solve, the next text to analyze, the next argument to win. That restlessness keeps you trapped in a cycle of constant motion, never actually arriving anywhere.
Wow.
You're trying to think your way out of a room that requires you to feel your way out. The intellect has a function, but when it becomes the sole mechanism for seeking the divine, it just leads to endless, exhausting wandering within your own mind. It's just another form of that stubborn-mindedness.
So external wandering in the jungle leads nowhere. Internal wandering through endless intellectual studying also leads nowhere. You can't walk there and you can't think your way there.
Right.
Where does that leave us? If God isn't in the stone shrine and God is in the cleverness of the mind, where's the true Lord?
Well, the text provides a remarkably direct map, pivoting entirely inward.
It really does. There is a line here that I want you, the listener, to just let wash over you. The text states plainly, the mind is in the body and the true Lord is in the mind. It is so incredibly simple, but it completely rewrites the rules of engagement.
It does, and it builds on that directness with incredibly powerful imagery regarding the physical form itself. It says that God fashioned the body vessels and infused the ambrosial nectar into them.
The body as a vessel. That feels so contrary to a lot of spiritual traditions that treat the physical body as something, I don't know, dirty, something you have to transcend or punish. This text says the body was fashioned specifically to hold this nectar.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, consider how that flips the traditional spiritual journey entirely on its head. You don't have to go on a pilgrimage to a shrine because you are the destination.
Oh, wow.
The journey isn't a horizontal movement across the globe, it's a vertical drop inward. The vessel, your physical being, has already been infused with that ambrosial nectar. It's already there, waiting to be recognized.
That brings up the profound intimacy described in this passage. The text says, the Lord's slave is in the Lord, and the Lord is in his slave. And it goes on to say, wherever I look, I see none other than the Lord. There is no separation anymore.
None at all.
It's not a king sitting on a cloud a billion miles away. It's an integration so tight, so seamless, that you can't tell where the human ends and the divine begins.
That integration is the ultimate goal. The text describes it as, merging into the true Lord, one is absorbed into truth. Notice the verb absorbed. It's not about standing next to the truth and observing it.
Like studying it.
Right. It's about being entirely dissolved into it, like a drop of water falling back into the ocean.
Which naturally brings us to the million-dollar practical question.
Right.
We know the external stuff is a distraction. We know the divine is internal, residing right there in the mind within this body vessel.
Right.
But how do we actually access it? Because I can sit here right now, close my eyes, and try to look inward. And I promise you, I am mostly just going to think about my emails or what I'm having for lunch later. I don't feel like a vessel radiating ambrosial nectar.
Which is a perfectly human experience, and it's exactly why the text doesn't just leave us with the theory of where the divine is. It introduces the core mechanism for how to bridge that gap between our scattered everyday thoughts and that internal nectar. It introduces the concept of sahaj.
Right, sahaj. Translated in our source material as intuitive poise. Let's dig into that phrase.
The text states very clearly that union with the Lord is acceptable, which is united in intuitive poise. It is through this state of sahaj that one finally stops coming and going in reincarnation. Furthermore, it says that God's mind is pleased only by loving devotional worship, not by the robes, not by the intellectual cleverness, but by love.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The text makes a very bold, almost provocative claim about what this looks like in practice. It says that God's people have no other work to do. They love the true Lord and Master, and they love the truth.
Yes.
When I first read no other work to do, my immediate reaction was, well, that's impossible. For you listening, you probably have a job, a family, a mortgage, a mountain of responsibilities. Does this text literally mean we are supposed to drop all our responsibilities, quit our jobs, and just sit on a cushion loving God all day? Because that sounds an awful lot like the renunciate path the text just told us was useless.
That is the exact trap to avoid. If we misinterpret no other work to do as abandoning life, we end up right back in the jungle trying to escape reality. Let's look at how the text defines the person who actually achieves this state.
Right.
It says, it is one who embodies good conduct and contemplative meditation, and whose mind abides in intuitive poise and contentment, since the beginning of time and throughout the ages.
Well, good conduct implies you are still actively interacting with the world. You are still making choices, doing things, helping people.
Exactly. Sahaj implies a natural state of being. It's not a forced artificial withdrawal from reality. It's about making loving devotion the underlying frequency of absolutely everything you do.
The underlying frequency.
Right. No other work to do means that devotion is the only true work, regardless of the physical task at hand. If you are washing the dishes, the underlying work is devotion. If you are putting a child to bed, the underlying work is devotion. Even if you are sitting at a desk filling out a spreadsheet, the internal posture is one of intuitive poise.
It's like the psychological concept of a flow state, but applied to your entire existence. When you are in a flow state, say, playing an instrument or running, you aren't forcing the action. You aren't aggressively thinking about every finger movement or footstep.
You're just in it.
Yeah, the action just flows through you naturally. You aren't straining to be spiritual. Just like a flower doesn't strain to bloom, it just does. The devotion becomes the baseline operating system of your life, rather than an activity you pencil in for an hour on Sunday mornings.
That is a highly accurate way to visualize it. The work is the posture of your heart, not the physical task your hands are doing. But the text also acknowledges a difficult truth. Achieving this state of intuitive poise, this constant, effortless flow of devotion, isn't something we can just hack our way into using our own willpower.
Right, because if it were easy, we wouldn't need a deeply profound text explaining it. We'd just all be walking around full of nectar all the time. So if the goal is sahaj, and the nectar is already inside us, why is it so incredibly hard to access? Why is my default state cleverness instead of poise?
Because the ego is incredibly loud, and it wants to remain in control. To quiet the ego and access that internal nectar, the text introduces the absolute necessity of a guide, the guru.
The true guru.
And it does not mince words about how vital this connection is. It says, without meeting the guru, they die and come and go in reincarnation.
It's positioned as an absolute make-or-break element.
It goes even further, equating the two entirely. Meeting the true guru, one meets with the Lord.
So what exactly is the guru doing in this context? If the nectar is already inside me, if my body's already the vessel, what is the guru's actual function?
The text explains the mechanics beautifully. It says to make him your guru, who implants the truth within you, who leads you to speak the unspoken speech, and who merges you in the word of the Shabbat.
Implants the truth within you. I love that phrasing because it implies a realignment. It's almost like the guru is providing the tuning fork so your internal frequency can finally match the nectar you already possess.
Exactly.
But I need you to break down some of the terminology here. The text says the guru merges you in the word of the Shabbat. What is the Shabbat?
Well, the Shabbat generally translates to the word or the divine sound, but we have to be careful not to think of it as a standard spoken word you'd find in a dictionary.
Okay, so what is it then?
In this spiritual framework, the Shabbat is the underlying vibrational truth of the universe. If the cleverness of the mind is the noisy, chaotic chatter of the ego, the Shabbat is the profound, unifying hum of existence. The guru doesn't give you a new book to read. The guru merges your awareness into that fundamental vibration.
Which connects perfectly to that phrase, unspoken speech. You can't read your way to an unspoken speech.
Right.
You can't use intellect to decode a vibration. It is an experience that exists entirely beyond standard language and logic.
What's fascinating here is it is a profound experiential merging, and sustaining this state requires a very specific kind of sustenance. There is a fascinating reference to a diet in this text that we need to examine.
Yes. I wanted to bring this up because it sounds so wild, almost jarring to our modern ears.
It does.
The text says that one who chants the name of the Lord eats the food of the fear of God, and by doing so becomes the Lord's servant, remaining absorbed in the Lord, eating the food of the fear of God.
Right.
We need to break down the mechanics of that, because fear usually has such a negative connotation. It triggers our fight-or-flight response. Why would a text focused on love and poise prescribe a diet of fear?
We have to completely recalibrate our definition of fear for this context. It's not about terror. It's not about cowering before a wrathful, punishing tyrant in the sky. The word translated as fear here points to a profound, overwhelming, ego-shattering awe.
Ah, like the feeling of standing at the edge of the Grand Canyon or looking up at a sky completely full of stars on a pitch-black night.
Imagine that exact feeling. In those moments of immense scale, you feel incredibly small, but you don't feel degraded.
No, not at all.
Your petty anxieties, your ego, your cleverness, they all just evaporate in the face of that vastness. When you truly comprehend the infinite magnitude of the divine, your small, stubborn mind steps back. It has no choice.
It's reverence, a respect so deep and overwhelming it bypasses the intellect entirely.
And the text says you eat this awe, meaning you consume it, you internalize it, and it becomes the fuel that powers your intuitive poise. When your ego is constantly dissolved by that profound reverence, you naturally slip into sahaj. You become what the text calls gurmukh.
Let's define Gurmukh for the listener as well.
A gurmukh is someone who is fundamentally oriented towards the guru and the divine, rather than being oriented towards their own ego. Their face is turned toward the light, so to speak. And the ultimate conclusion of all this guidance, all this awe, and all this intuitive poise is absolute surrender.
Surrender.
Yes, the text says, as it pleases you, keep me under your will.
Surrender to the divine will. It's letting go of the steering wheel completely, trusting that the flow state of sahaj will carry you exactly where you need to be.
Consider the sheer power of the state of being once it is achieved.
Right.
When someone reaches this level of sahaj where they are fully surrendered, eating the food of awe and filled with natural love, the impact isn't just a quiet personal victory.
Right. It ripples outward into the world.
Massively. The text says that such a person, in the twinkling of an eye, saves millions.
In the twinkling of an eye. It doesn't say they save millions by embarking on a 20-year global speaking tour or by writing endless treatises on theology. The transformation is instantaneous and immense. Just the presence of someone truly abiding in an intuitive poise, truly radiating that internal nectar, is enough to liberate millions.
It entirely reorients our understanding of what it means to be effective in the world. We are conditioned to think that effectiveness requires endless busyness, visible strain, and external action. The text suggests that true spiritual effectiveness requires profound, loving stillness.
So let's pull all of this together for the listener, because this has been quite a journey. Guru Nanak is fundamentally telling us that the external checklist is an illusion. You cannot read your way, dress your way, or travel your way to spiritual purity. Those external actions just keep you speeding your wheels in the cycle of reincarnation because they rely on the ego's cleverness.
The truth is unequivocally an inside job. The divine is found in the mind, inside the body vessel that is already holding the ambrosial nectar.
And we access it not by straining harder, but through sahaj, that intuitive poise, that flow state, where loving devotion becomes the baseline frequency of whatever we are doing. We are guided by the true guru, who tunes our frequency to the Shabad, the divine vibration, and we sustain it by feeding on that profound awe until we can completely surrender to the divine will. By doing this, we break free entirely. So what does this all mean?
It means the frantic outward search is over. The anxiety of trying to achieve spirituality through cleverness is replaced by a peaceful inward realization of what is already there.
Which brings me to a final thought I want to leave you with, the listener, to mull over on your own. We spend so much of our lives, our time, our money, our energy, trying to add things to ourselves to become better. We want more knowledge, more experiences, more stamps on the passport, more bullet points on the resume. We constantly operate as if we are empty vessels that need to be filled up from the outside world. But if, as this text suggests, your body is already a vessel completely filled with ambrosial nectar, what if the ultimate spiritual achievement isn't about acquiring anything new at all? What if it is simply about unlearning your own cleverness, just enough to notice what you've been carrying the entire time?
That is the exact shift in perspective this text invites us to make.
It changes everything. Thanks so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it gave you something incredible to think about. Until next time.